Well, greetings and welcome to another edition of the Has Been podcast. I'm your resident Has Been host. As we talk to you on February 19th, it's a Thursday. Lots to recap, lots to look ahead to when it comes to Purdue basketball. And we're going to start with the women's team. Um, they played Rutgers over the last weekend. They won the game. It was a big game for them as they try to get in the Big Ten tournament. So they are 4-10 going into Thursday's game against Iowa, and they're in okay shape to make the Big Ten tournament. But the biggest news for them is that they've lost Madison Layden-Zay, at least for Thursday's game against Iowa, probably Sunday's game against Maryland, and then after that, we'll see. She dislocated her kneecap late in the game. They popped it back into place there on the floor. She had x-rays and MRIs and everything else that you do, and no ligament damage, no structural damage. It's sore. So she's going to be unable to play here in the short term. Uh, but the hope is, and it's a hope right now, is that maybe that she could get back uh, for their final two games against Oregon and Northwestern, so they can wrap up a bid to the Big Ten tournament. This will be a completely different team without her. Uh, she's the second leading scorer in Big Ten play. She holds the career record for three-pointers. She's a threat on the floor, so you do have to pay attention to her and guard her. But now that you remove her from the mix, not only do you lose I guess, your point guard for the year, or for at least in the short term here, because she has been running the point, and now your point guard situation becomes a revolving door even more than what it has been. Um, you know, Katie Drills was unsure who would be in the starting lineup when they play Iowa on Thursday. Um, I would even, I mean, I can guess all I want, but I'm not absolutely sure how they're going to approach this without Madison Layden-Zay. It's unfortunate that it happened. It's hard to see Purdue winning against Iowa and Maryland, even if they had Madison Layden-Zay. I think they felt like they had a good shot to beat Oregon with the team that took the floor against Rutgers, and then going to Northwestern, which is in a similar situation as Purdue as far as record goes, that they could, potentially win those two games in the last week of the regular season. I just think they need one more win to kind of wrap up a bid in the Big Ten tournament. The league only takes 15 of the 18 teams to the tournament. Purdue is currently in 14th place. They hold tiebreakers against Rutgers, and as of right now, they hold tiebreakers against Indiana and Wisconsin, which would kind of be in that mix. Nebraska is also 5-10, but they're probably going to get to 6 wins by the end of the year. Um, so I don't know if they fall far enough in the standings that Purdue has to worry about a tiebreaker with them. They would lose the tiebreaker with them because they lost to the Huskers. The other way that Purdue can get in is, the other teams just don't win. Ideally, you don't have Penn State win two of its last three games because they do hold a tiebreaker against Purdue. Um, and Indiana's really last chance to move ahead of Purdue from a tie-breaking standpoint is to beat Oregon when they play this weekend, because Indiana's final two games are against Rutgers and Penn State. Um, and the reason the Oregon game is important because of their placing in the standings. The reason Purdue would have a tiebreaker over Indiana right now is because, first of all, they split their two meetings. So in that case, you go to the top of the conference and you start working your way down as far as um, who beat UCLA. Well, nobody. Who beat Michigan? Well, neither one of those teams beat Michigan. And you keep moving on down until the tie is broken. And the tie gets broken because Purdue beat Washington. And as of right now, Washington is ahead of Oregon in the standings. So that's why Purdue holds that tiebreaker. But Also, Oregon and Washington are going to play, I think, the last game of the regular season. So that could factor into it. If IU loses to Oregon, that gives Purdue the inside track, at least with a tiebreaker from Indiana. But Purdue would also need Penn State to lose um, two of its last three games, which they're they're two and whatever, um, 2-13 maybe. Which obviously they're capable of losing two of their last three games. They've done it most of the year. Um, so there's a way for Purdue to get in, even if they go 0-4 down this stretch. You would be backing your way into the tournament, but you're in the tournament. Uh, on the flip side, Wisconsin's going to, probably take a 9-game losing streak into the Big Ten tournament. So you could have a couple teams just kind of going through the back way to get in the tournament, but they got to fill the spots, and that's what it is. And I think this team's going to have a hard time winning against anybody without Madison Layden-Zay. I mean, she is the second leading scorer on the team, but she does so many other things to make sure people are in the right spots. And um, Katie and her have talked about potentially being a grad assistant next year. Um, I mean, her mom was a coach, won 5 state titles in Indiana. Her dad was a coach. Her grandpa was a coach. I mean, coaching's kind of in her blood. It's just a matter if she wants to take that step now. But at the forefront of her mind right now is getting her knee healthy and in a position where she could potentially play. So Thursday's game against Iowa will be very interesting because you're taking one of your, if not your best player, off the floor against a top 15 team that Purdue is going to have trouble with, even with Madison Layden-Zay on the floor. Iowa's just really good inside. They really dominate points in the paint. 3-point shooting is good. They do have a player named Chit Chat. Chit Chat Wright's her name. It's the name she goes by, but she was a transfer from Georgia, Georgia Tech, and she's kind of they lost Iowa lost one of their top 3-point shooters earlier in the year, and Chit Chat has stepped up. I think she's hitting around 50% the last 5 games from 3-point range. So Purdue has to worry about the perimeter. They really have to worry about the inside. Purdue is expected to get Lana McCarthy back. She's been out the last couple games in concussion protocol. But how many minutes can she play, and how does the rotation work with Kendall Purrier and Avery Gordon? But Purdue has a very tough assignment against Iowa. They'll have an even more difficult assignment against Maryland on Sunday. And then, I think the goal for them right now is just get to the final week, see what the status of Madison Layden-Zay is, and then go from there. Then try to beat Oregon or Northwestern to kind of finish out the regular season and then go into the Big Ten tournament. So there's a path for them, even if they don't win these last 4 games. But ideally, you want to get in with a win. But I think just for this program and this team, just getting in would be um, a step further than what they did last year. Now, does that mean there's progress? That's probably a discussion for another time as we wrap up the season. How much progress have we seen? And now you're evaluating this team and this coach and this program without one of the team's best players this year. So I think that's a hard judge, but based on what we've seen so far, there has been progress, but it hasn't been enough. Um, the fact that you are going to the final um, week of the regular season, still looking to get in the Big Ten tournament, might indicate that there hasn't been enough progress uh, to to judge and to determine what the next step would be with this program. Um, so that's a discussion that's ongoing. Um, and for some, it might be easy. For others, it might be hard to kind of figure out what should be the next step if there is a next step. And then you always have money involved in this when you're dealing with contracts and things like that. So a lot of wheels in motion as far as what's going to happen here. Um, it's always, to me, it's always important to let the whole season play out and then uh, make your decisions that way. But there are points during the course of the year where you like it or you don't like it, and you just have to kind of bring all that information together and then figure out, you know, what's next for this program. And the goal for this program this year and this team was here to get to the Big Ten tournament and potentially play in a non-NCAA tournament event. They can still get in the Big Ten tournament. A non-NCAA tournament event probably, especially if they lose the next two games, probably won't be an option. Um, there's no hard criteria that you have to be 500 overall record to get in, like the WBIT and the WNIT. But I think they want you as close to 500 as possible. The WBIT is sponsored by the NCAA. They use the same criteria to pick the teams that they do for the big tournament. Um, and that event has, the last 2 years they've done the event. The Big Ten teams won it. So, it's been good for the Big Ten the last couple of years. But, whether Purdue can get in that tournament, they probably have to win more than one game here down the stretch to get really in consideration for that tournament. And then you factor in, are you going to have Madison Layden-Zay or not? It's not for certain that she will play again. The hope is that she will, but it all depends on how she attacks the rehab and how she feels, and she'll have to wear some sort of brace on her knee to keep everything in place. Um, so, but yeah, they've got a big, you know, again, their next two games I don't think are winnable for them based on the current situation. But after that, if you can get her back heading into a game against Oregon and then Northwestern, you give yourself uh, a better shot. Onto the men's team, Michigan's really good. And I think you have to keep that in mind. They played really well the other night, um, and I Purdue, you know, Purdue hurt itself. Um, when you look at these games, you're always if you're rooting for Purdue or you're on the Purdue perspective of all this, you always look at what they didn't do, um, and and that's why they lost. Well, sometimes you run into a team that's just really good on that night, and Michigan's really good. Yeah, Michigan was really good on this night, and Michigan should be the favorite to win the national title, but it doesn't mean they will. This is the same Michigan team that was down 13 to Northwestern in the first half. Same Michigan team that lost to Wisconsin at home. Um, but they were able to take care of Purdue on the night they needed to take care of Purdue, and that was Tuesday night. They kind of blitzed them in the first half, um, and the game ended up 11, but it felt like a 20-point loss from that standpoint. But what it does is it takes Purdue out of the Big Ten race because Michigan's not going to lose three more times. Um, and that, Purdue's got four losses in the Big Ten, so Michigan would have to lose three more times, and that doesn't look like it's going to happen. Now they have to go to Illinois. They still host Michigan State, so on paper they're really going to have to fight and win those games. But it would be a surprise if Purdue at the end of the regular season is involved in the title. The goal for Purdue right now is just to um, get one of the double byes in the Big Ten tournament. Though if Michigan's your number one seed in the Big Ten tournament, I mean there's three spots left. So that's between right now. I think it's between Illinois, Purdue, Michigan State, and Nebraska. Illinois seems to be playing at a different level right now. They trounced USC on Wednesday night out there. Then they're going to play UCLA on Saturday. Not the ideal time to be going to the West Coast, but somebody's got to go west. Those teams need to have home games this late in the year, and this is how this conference is set up now, and you have to deal with it. Um, but I don't. At some point, this whole travel thing going out west and teams coming east, it just becomes. It doesn't become part of the narrative anymore. It's just what it is. And I think Brad Underwood, the Illinois coach, said something last night to the effect of like, listen, we're on charter flights, we're in nice hotels. They don't travel the way that the normal people travel. They don't have to, they might have a delay here or there, but they put some thought in their travel, and just like Purdue did when it went out west. Um, I think over time this becomes less and less of a narrative about the league. I mean, it whatever data they want to use and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, they don't travel like the normal Americans travel. They just don't. It's the way, it's the way it is, and they're ready to invest a lot of money to get from point A to point B, and that's Purdue does it. Every Big Ten team does it. Every Division One team does it. So again, it's not the best time to be playing out west. You prefer not to do it, but again, somebody's got to go out there, and I would hope in future schedules they're rotating teams. Like the same team doesn't go out west in the middle of February every year, or you know, through the course of a 5 year schedule, you know you go out west in early January one year, you go out west in early February the next, and it kind of rotates through where the same team's not going at the same time. I think that's probably the most fair thing to do in this situation. Because, the one thing you don't want is go out west in February, right before the Big Ten tournament, come back. Maybe you're dragging a little bit, and then you somehow get to the semifinals and you need a little bit of rest. And then all of a sudden you're playing Thursday at noon in the NCAA tournament and you feel like you're not like physically ready to go. Um, that could potentially play a factor, but that's also kind of worst case scenario for teams. So we'll see what happens with that. But the point was Illinois is playing well, Michigan's playing well. They do play each other in about 10 days to hash out if Illinois can catch them, catch Michigan, or if Michigan is just going to wrap it up on that day. Thing Illinois needs, they need um, Michigan to come back to the pack a little bit, and but they could help that cause. But how that affects Purdue, they're just trying to get a double bye in the Big Ten tournament. The Big Ten tournament, it's coaches really don't want to play to Sunday unless you need those games to get in the NCAA tournament. Most coaches will privately say that, yeah, we'll go to the Big Ten tournament, we'll play, we'll prepare, but if we get beat, that gives me 2 extra days of rest going in the NCAA tournament, or 3 extra days of rest, or one day extra rest, whatever it may be. I mean, they're not. I don't think they're heartbroken if they lose a game. Again, they're competitors. Everybody wants to win a championship of some sort, and I think for the most part, teams play hard in this event. Um, it's not just because they want it more or whatever. It's just again, it's a chance to play for a championship and stuff like that. So you want to put yourself in the best position, and having the double bye is the best position. But the difference between being the 4 and the 5 seed, yes, you got to play an extra game, but um, I don't know if that's such a big deal in this situation. Now, obviously, the more games you play, the um, the more it wears on your legs and stuff like that. But Purdue's just trying to get itself in the top four and then go from there. And also, they need to win games here down the stretch to put themselves in a position for an NCAA tournament seed and for the best possible path that they can have. Ideally, you want to play as close to home as possible. And when the year started, Purdue's path appeared to be, you know, get a high seed, go to St. Louis, which is the closest first and second round to Purdue, and then go to Chicago in the Midwest Regional, which is the closest regional to Purdue. But what has happened is Purdue has not stayed at the top, but Michigan has is now ahead of Purdue on the seed line. Illinois is ahead of Purdue on the seed line. Um, depending on your take of Nebraska and how they do the rest of the way, they could be above Purdue um, on the seed line. So, and then you still have Michigan State in the mix of all this. And the one thing to keep in mind is when the NCAA committee um, places the teams in their regional, is that the first three teams from a conference have to be in different regions. So in this case, Michigan is the top team from the Big Ten. They, as of right now, would go to the Midwest Regional in Chicago. They would be placed there. They have to win two games to get there, but they would be placed there. Next up would be Illinois. So Illinois, in theory, could not be in the Midwest Regional as a two seed or under their principles that they would have to be in a different region. So do they go east? Do they go south? They'll figure that out. And then your third team from the Big Ten, and this happens because you have a lot of teams in the tournament from one conference. Like third team right now would probably be Purdue, I think. So with the Midwest taken and then the East or the South taken, Purdue would probably either go to the East or the South. Um, but that would not prevent them from playing in St. Louis in the first and second rounds potentially. But um, Michigan has to have somewhere to play, and they're going to get the closest spot to their campus. Illinois has to have somewhere to play. They're going to get the closest spot in campus. In St. Louis, and you know, as of today, you could see um, Michigan and Illinois in St. Louis. Uh, they would not play each other, but they would be Michigan pod would be there, and the Illinois pod would be there. And um, where would that leave Purdue? They'd have to go somewhere else. Buffalo, maybe Philadelphia. Um, it would appear that Iowa State, Nebraska would probably be headed to Oklahoma City. Um, and there might be another Big 12 team in there that would end up. Um, so the Purdue situation's kind of in flux. If they would have beaten Michigan, I think they had a long shot of being a number one seed in the tournament. Not the overall number one seed, but getting on the one line. But now that they didn't meet Michigan, I don't see a path for them to get to the number one line unless they went out, they're beating people by 30 points, but then Michigan drops, UConn, which lost last night, would drop, Arizona would drop, Duke would drop. I mean, you'd have to have a perfect storm of situations occur for Purdue to climb back to the one line. I think the latest projections had Purdue as a two seed, but that was before the loss to Michigan. So, I mean, if you want Purdue to play close to home in the NCAA tournament, you want them to go to St. Louis, and then you want them to go to Chicago. There is a path to Chicago, but not as the number one seed. There's a path to Chicago as a number three seed because of the number of Big Ten teams that'll be in the tournament. You can have a conference team at one and three in the same region because they would not be scheduled to meet until the Elite Eight. And that's one of the parameters that the committee has. They try to avoid an early conference matchup um, in the tournament. They don't want to happen until after the Elite Eight, but your lower seeded teams maybe make a run in the tournament, and then the Sweet 16 you have a Big Ten or an SEC matchup just because on the volume of teams. The committee can't control that, but they can control the first part of it. And ideally, if seeds hold, you're not getting conference rematches until the Elite Eight at the earliest. And if it happens in the Final Four, it happens in the Final Four. That's just the way it goes. So there's a path for Purdue playing Chicago. Um, and it's again, they'll have to win some games. Um, and be impressive in doing it. Some of this will be revealed on Saturday when the NCAA has its early bracket reveal. I think it's on CBS about 12:30, um, where the committee is meeting probably today and tomorrow in Indianapolis, or they might be virtual. I don't know, but they're going to do here's where things stand right now with the top 16 teams. They're going to place the teams in the region, they're going to seed them, and then they'll use their parameters and their principles, and then you'll get a look at where Purdue's at this weekend. I'd be curious if they do take the Indiana game Friday night into account about what um, if that's factored into it. You would hope that it would be because it would be the latest data point that they would need. But obviously, everything through Thursday's games and hopefully Friday's games will be used in that. The one kind of disappointing thing about it is you have Duke and Michigan playing on Saturday, and then you have Arizona and Houston playing on Saturday, and those two games will not be factored into this early reveal. If somehow they could factor those two games into the early reveal, I think it'd give you a clearer picture of where things stand. But that's not going to happen. So anyway, that was a long ramble about a lot of stuff that you probably didn't understand, but just is kind of locked in my brain, and I just kind of spit it out for that. Uh, Mentioned the Indiana game. Purdue should not have lost to Indiana the first game, um, but they did, and that's kind of the of their losses. That's the one that sticks out the most. I mean, you can stomach losing to Iowa State. You can stomach losing to Illinois. You can stomach losing to Michigan because those teams are elite. Indiana's not an elite team this year. I mean, they're a good team, but they're not an elite team. They'll probably make the NCAA tournament, but that's a game that Purdue should not have lost. It's a rivalry game, I get it, and all this kind of stuff, but that's not a team that Purdue should lose to. And I'm not saying that payback's coming, but Purdue needs to straighten itself out Friday against Indiana um, to get itself moving in the right direction. And if you look at Purdue's three losses against elite teams, and really the fourth loss against Indiana, there's a couple common themes there. One of them is opponents are getting too many offensive rebounds and converting them into second chance points. That happened against Michigan, happened against Illinois. Didn't happen as much against Iowa State because Iowa State was like smoking red hot shooting in the second half. Um, and the other, I mean, they're just and in their four losses, they've given up, um, uh, double digit 3 pointers. I think they're out being outscored by a bunch from the 3 point line. I mean, the other team's hitting, but Purdue's not. And it's some I know players don't go out and try to miss shots, but whether it's defense related, there's when they and I think long rebounds are hurting Purdue a little bit because teams are shooting threes against them, and when you miss those missed shots are usually longer rebounds, and you gotta track them down. Michigan was really good at that on um, Tuesday, using their athletic ability to tip and pat balls back to the perimeter. Illinois' size really played a role in that when they lost to them. Um, but they've got to get that straightened out because as Tuesday's game unfolded, you were at least I was when I was watching it. Every time Purdue did not secure the defensive rebound and Michigan got an offensive rebound, you were like I was anticipating they were going to hit a three. And they did 4 times in the first half off offensive rebounds. Four different players hit 3 pointers after Purdue was unable to secure the defensive rebound. That's an area I think really needs to get if you're going to pinpoint one area for Purdue to clean up. I think that's the one. They've got to keep teams off the offensive boards and prevent second chance points because if your first line of defense on the first shot is good, then you're in decent shape at that point. But if you continue to do it, if you continue to give up second chance points, continue to give up offensive rebounds, eventually you get caught. And they got caught against Michigan. And again, Michigan was really good on Tuesday, and their bench was terrific. I think 34 points from their bench, 6 of 7 from 3 point range. They came in and outscored Purdue's bench, and Purdue's bench this year has been pretty good at times. But Purdue was not able to match the production that Michigan was getting from its bench. And of course, Purdue missed a ton of layups early, and I think that altered the game a lot because you're not scoring on your end, Michigan scoring on their end, and eventually that's how leads grow and games get out of hand. The Purdue missed 9 layups. Um, that's just that's not that's not something that they can live with, and they're not going to win elite. They're going to beat elite teams doing that. You can beat some non-conference teams doing that, but you're not going to beat elite teams doing that, and that's what Purdue's going to face the rest of the way in the conference, and then Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. So I know it sounds simple, and how can they miss layups? Stuff happens. It's not perfect. That's why nobody shoots 1,000 or 100% for a season. You know, they just don't. But they needed to minimize the damage as much as they could, and they could never get enough stops in a row to put a lot of game pressure on Michigan. Now late they did; it got under 10, but this was, this game was decided in the first half. Purdue needs to do the same thing to Indiana. They need to get out fast. They need to jump on them. Uh, get the crowd involved, and make Indiana doubt that they can come back. And if you deliver a couple punches in the first 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, Purdue can really wrestle control of this game and get back to winning, and then head down to the final 2 weeks of the regular season just trying to get a double bye and then put themselves in a good position to get a high enough seed in the NCAA tournament uh, to make a difference. So, all right, well, I think that's it. Spring football is going to start in March. I know football's not on the mind of anybody, but just FYI, it's going to start in March. So yeah, we appreciate you stopping by, and we'll be back probably next week to wrap up what happened this weekend. Look ahead to see uh, what both basketball teams need to do to, from the women's standpoint, get in the Big Ten tournament, and the men just trying to get that double bye and put themselves in the best position when it comes to the NCAA tournament. All righty. Well, again, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it, and have a good day.